All right, welcome to question 19 of the AAMC preview practice test review. And let us jump into the question. All right, during a new rotation, you are having difficulty working with others on the medical team. The rotation director asked to meet with you to share feedback about your performance from other peer members of the team. During the meeting, the director states that your peers believe your professional conduct needs improvement. The director also shares specific feedback about your behavior and offers to discuss your areas for improvement in greater detail. All right, so what's the main problem here? The main problem is that, kind of just summarized really quick, is that you got negative feedback about your professional conduct from peers, and you were discussing this with your director when they offer to further discuss your areas in need of improvement. And I think we can see some parallels to a lot of different questions we've encountered so far, right? Not only are you getting this negative feedback, which means, you made a mistake, right? So when we've messed up or made a mistake, remember it's critical that we embody a growth mindset, right? We take responsibility for our mistakes. We be open to feedback and definitely don't blame others, right? But look at this last question too. This last sentence. Look at this last sentence. So they're offering to discuss your areas of improvement. And that's really key because we're also being invited into a discussion. And remember, because we are being invited into a discussion, the level or the degree we are engaging with that invitation and engaging with that discussion and allowing for conversation, that's going to be very important here too, right? So with that out of the way, let's jump into 19.1. All right, 19.1. Tell the director you will find additional time to work on your professional behavior. All right, so let's start where we normally start, right? With our initial differentiation, right? And we have these list of questions so far, and we can look at all of these. This first one isn't as relevant, right? So let's start with the second one. Are you taking steps to resolve or address the main problem, right? And here we very clearly are taking steps to resolve the main problem, right? Remember, the main problem is that we got negative feedback, and this response is taking responsibility for that feedback, and we're saying we're gonna work on it. So immediately, I know this is gonna be a pretty effective response, definitely in the effective range, right? And you can also see that if you ask how likely is it to cause a problem or make the situation worse, this response here is not very likely to cause a problem, right? Or there's almost no room for that. And because of that, we're gonna put this into a 3 and a 4. All right. So how do we differentiate between a 3 and a 4? Well, remember what we just talked about, that the director shared specific feedback about our behavior and offers to discuss our areas of improvement in further detail. Well, if you kind of notice, even though the director offered that, this response doesn't really engage with that conversation, right? It doesn't show that we're open to discussing it. We kind of just batted that off and we're like, okay, we'll find time to work on our behavior. So that's not that good and doesn't really show that openness to conversation as much as I would like. Also, although we're saying we're going to find additional time to work on our behavior, let's look back at our differentiation questions. And definitely feel free to read through these. And some of them are really good, right? We are having a growth mindset. We are trying to prevent similar problems from occurring in the future. We are taking accountability for a mistake to some degree, but remember, for if you read this question carefully, to what degree are you correcting your mistake, right? Also, furthermore, we can look at this question. Are we taking actionable or tangible steps to improve the situation? Right? And now, and this one too, are we being open to conversation? All these questions, when applied to our current response, kind of show that, we're not really correcting our behavior to a strong degree because we're not specifying how we're going to correct our behavior. We're just saying we will correct our behavior, right? We don't have those actions. We're just saying it. We're not backing it up with actions. And that kind of plays into the other point of this isn't a very tangible or actionable step, right? All we're doing is saying we're going to work on our behavior. We're going to find additional time to work on our behavior. We're not really specifying how we're going to go about doing that. Because of that combined with the fact that we're not really open to conversation, this is going to be a 3 response, right? It's going to be less effective or less likely to improve the situation, to correct the main problem, as a 4 response would. So this is going to be an effective answer. It's a good answer, but just doesn't match that threshold needed to cross into a 4. All right, 19.2. Tell the director that your peers' opinions do not accurately reflect your true behavior on the job. All right, so let's go back. Are we taking steps to address the main problem? And remember, anytime we make a mistake, we got to own up to it, have a growth mindset. Here, we are definitely not doing that, right? We are rejecting our peers' feedback and not taking responsibility for it. I know this is going to be a 1 to 2 response because of that. So differentiating between a 1 and a 2 response. Once again, definitely feel free to read through these. One thing I will say is clearly we are rejecting our feedback, right? If you read this question right here, we are being dismissive to the feedback of our peers, right? To what degree are you taking accountability for your mistake? We are not taking account. I'm going to change this really quick, actually, just to make it a little bit simpler. We're not taking accountability for our mistake at all. We're not being open to conversation, right? We are rejecting the premise that we could be in the wrong because we're being so dismissive and rejecting the feedback. We're talking about over consequences. This might cause, almost will cause further issue with our director, kind of hurting that professional relationship if we are being so outright disrespectful and not wanting to improve. This will be in a very ineffective answer for sure. And I think this verb also right here, tell the director. I think that's also a rather strong word when you've just been called in, right? You've just been called in to discuss your negative feedback. Telling the director in that way, that also kind of hints at, we are being disrespectful and dismissive. All right, 19.3. All right, suggest to the director that the other team members may misunderstand your behavior. Okay, so, let's go back to our initial differentiation. Are you taking steps to resolve or address the main problem? Are we kind of taking responsibility for the issue, trying to improve, Also, how likely is this response to cause a problem or make the situation worse? Well, we're not really taking responsibility, right? We're not taking responsibility. I don't think we're, rejecting our teammates' feedback as clearly. We're kind of rationalizing it, We're not saying they're completely in the wrong. We're just saying they may misunderstand. And, we're not clearly rejecting, but we're still not taking responsibility. I'm going to put this into a 1 or a 2. Right, just because we're not really doing, and this could cause a problem, right? It could further conflict with our team members, and it's not a great look. So, 1 or a 2. How do we differentiate between a 1 or a 2? Right, we can go back, and we will go back to the chart here in a second, but I just want to also kind of touch on what I said before, right? In the last question, we very clearly rejected our teammates' feedback, right? We're saying, no, they're in the wrong and our true behavior should not be criticized. That was 19.2. Here, we're not keeping that same sort of rejection, and we are contending with the feedback from our peers to some degree, right? We are contending with it. We're trying to understand. We're not taking responsibility for it. But, if you go to Let me go to, we can look at a few of these. We're not really disengaging from the problem as we did last time, right? We're trying to rationalize the feedback, trying to contend with it. We're not really precluding further discussion, right? And you can tell, even look at the initial verbs, right? Here it says suggest. The other one was tell, right? Tell is a much stronger word that precludes conversation to a high degree than suggest. So it's a little bit better, right? It's a little bit better. We're being somewhat open to our conversation, but we're not really taking responsibility either. Nonetheless, though, because we are contending with the feedback, we're not outright rejecting it or dismissing it, and we're not being as disrespectful or rude, this will be a 2 response. It's less likely to cause a problem, but it's still, in the ineffective ranges. All right. That was 19.3. Let's go to 19.4. Remind the director that sometimes it takes time to adjust working with new team members. All right, so, let's start where we started before. Are we addressing the main problem, right? And here, we're not really addressing the main problem, right? We're still not taking responsibility and attempting to improve based on the feedback we got. So, I'm going to put this into a 1 or a 2. Remember, that's the key to problems where we made a mistake, right? To what degree are we trying to grow and learn from that mistake? We're not doing that here. I'm going to put this into a 1 or a 2. However, just like our last problem, we're not rejecting our teammates' feedback, right? We are contending with it to some degree. We are, once again, trying to rationalize, why they would give that certain feedback. We're not rejecting it or dismissing it. We just have a different perspective. And, we are trying to discuss it and trying to understand, why our teammates would do something like that. We're not just saying they're totally in the wrong. And I'm going to, just because of these last 2 questions, let's add something here. Because I think it's a bit different than what we've had or what we currently have in our differentiations, but I think still relevant. To what degree are you rejecting feedback? And this kind of gets at the core of why 19.3 and now why 19.4 are ineffective responses, right? They're not very ineffective responses. They're 2s. It's because we're not rejecting feedback to such a strong degree. We're still trying to contend with it. We're not taking responsibility for the feedback enough to make it a 3 or a 4, but we're not rejecting it outright. For that reason, it's going to be a 2 response. All right, 19.5. Oh, where are we? 19.5. Ask the director if you can set up a follow-up meeting in the near future to discuss your progress. All right, so we can ask, are we addressing the issue, right? Our initial differentiation. Are we addressing the issue? Here, remember what that means is we're having that growth mindset. Are we trying to learn from the experience? Very clearly we are, right? We're taking responsibility for the feedback, for our mistake. We're trying to learn and improve. That's going to be a 3 or a 4. All right, so differentiating between a 3 and a 4. And we touched on this. I forgot which video we touched on it, but we have definitely touched on it before where, we have this phrase of setting up follow-up meetings, right? I think one of these was in the scenario where we were representing our student body as part of the student government, and there's a very similar response here. And this kind of phrasing of setting up follow-up meetings, the AAMC likes a lot, right? But why do they like it a lot? It's because if you look on differentiating 3s and 4s, right, one key thing is, preventing similar problems from occurring in the future, for sure. But also, are we being open to conversation, right? And setting up meetings in the future is being very open to that conversation, right? It's enabling and taking the initiative to have more conversation. Not only that, it's a very actionable and tangible step, right? Setting up a meeting is, comparing it to, not saying these questions are relative to each other, but let's compare this question right here, 19.5 to 19.1, where we just said, we're going to find additional time to work on improving our behavior. See, that is not as direct and specific as this response of setting up a follow-up meeting. This is more tangible, more actionable, right? Are we embodying a growth mindset? Very clearly embodying that growth mindset, trying to improve. And we're, of course, taking accountability and correcting our mistake, right? Because we're trying to improve on it, trying to keep ourselves accountable. So for all those reasons, this is going to be a 4 response. All right, 19.6. Explain that you haven't noticed any difficulties in working with the medical team. All right, so, let's ask, are we addressing the main issue right here? That means, are we taking responsibility for our mistake? Are we taking steps to address it? No, we are not, right? We are not doing that at all. We're not taking responsibility. In fact, I don't even know if I have this in here, but I definitely should. I don't have it, so I'm going to add it really quick because this is... Are you lying? Right? I can't imagine. There's almost no scenario where lying is going to be an effective answer and is not going to cause more problems, right? Because we do know, right? Very clearly, it told us that during a new rotation, you are having difficulty working with other members of the team. So we clearly realize that we're having difficulty working with other members, right? So saying that we haven't noticed, saying we haven't noticed any difficulties is outright lying to our director. This is going to be a 1 response for sure. Definitely be very cautious of answers where you're just outright lying. 19.7. All right. Discuss with the director for possible solutions to address your peers' feedback. All right. So, are we addressing the issue? And very clearly we are, right? Even has the word address in here. Very clearly we're addressing the issue and trying to learn from the experience. This is going to be a 3 and a 4 response. So differentiating between a 3 and a 4. Well, we can read through these again, right? But just like 19.5, I want to emphasize how, open a conversation we are. Remember, that was very key in this problem because we were tasked with, in our director invited us for a discussion. And we're being very open to discussion here, right? We're being very, very open to discussion, directly discussing with the director. Not only that, this is once again a very actionable, very direct step, right? This is clearly stating what we're trying to do and how we're going to act in order to improve and grow from the situation, right? Once again, I want to differentiate this question, 19.7 to 19.1, where we really just asked and really all we were doing was saying we're going to find additional time. Here we are answering how we're going to do that, right? We're not just saying that we're going to find additional time. We're actually discussing with our director possible solutions. Therefore, this is going to be a 4 response. Very actionable, very tangible, open to discussion, and correcting our behavior, right, to a very high degree. All right, that was question 19. I hope everyone is doing well, and yeah, remember, if you can, please like and comment and subscribe. It really helps push the video in this series to more people. And I will see y'all for question 20. All right.